G'day guys, it's Mark here from North Oz, and in today's video we're going to be talking about some reasons why I ended up selling my ute and getting a wagon, and potentially why you should too. There are a lot of pros and cons to both, but in my opinion, I feel like that the wagon is a much better option, and it is something that is often overlooked when people are thinking about purchasing their next vehicle. So to give you a bit of background, I ended up selling about a year ago my 2008, I call it the Green Monster, but it was my Nissan Navara. It was lifted, it had a canopy on the back, had all the fruit on it, 12-volt system, everything. It was brilliant, and I ended up making the decision to sell it to get a brand new vehicle. But not only that, the price of four-wheel drives at the time was quite high like it is now, and I ended up buying a brand new vehicle. I ended up getting a 2021 Toyota Prado, and since then, for the last 12 months, I've put about 13,000 kilometers on it. Might not seem like a lot, but I've divided it, between a couple of vehicles, so it's actually pretty much all, adventure kilometers, whatever you want to call it, and also with some city driving in there as well when I'm too lazy to use a clutch. So for me, I guess all I'm trying to say is that why you should be listening to me for this video is I owned my Nissan Navara, owned that ute for quite some time, and I made quite an unpopular, or something that just doesn't happen very often. I switched platforms. I went from a ute to a wagon. And in today's video, I want to give you 5 reasons why I think that maybe you should too, but I just want to give you 5 reasons and 5, of my opinions as to why it was actually a really good decision. And maybe this might spark a little bit of discussion in the comment section. So I would really love to hear from you guys. I always comment, always reply to your comments as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's get into 5 reasons why you should have a wagon over a ute. So the first reason is safety. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's a bit funny. Don't all vehicles have safety ratings and things like that? Yeah, they do. Think about context though, it's very important. So where I live in the tropics, live in Cairns, and it rains quite a bit. And when it rains, the roads get very slippery. You combine as well the fact that a lot of the roads that I take are going, and to get to the camping sites that I like to go to, they require going up a very steep and winding road. One of 3 ways to get up to the tablelands, which is where I enjoy doing most of my camping, especially in the summer months when it's very, very hot. It's a little bit cooler up there. So you have to understand that those roads are very slippery, and that Navara, mate, it tried to kill me so many times. Honestly, it was just, I would consider myself to be a very safe driver, and the back kicked out on that probably 3 or 4 times. And that was me being very, very careful. You might be thinking, oh yeah, that's fine. He wasn't being very careful. I tell you what, guys, I cannot tell you how safely I drove that vehicle, and I would still be battling with it in the wet. Now, you're probably thinking that new vehicles do a lot better in the wet. Yes, they do. You are correct on that. However, there is still that safety element involved of, not being as, the weight distribution isn't as good in a ute compared to a wagon. So I have driven in newer utes, and yes, you are correct if you are thinking that the newer utes are better. But we're talking about utes in general, and we're talking about wagons in general. And in general, wagons are a lot safer, in my opinion. So something that I don't really understand is why people go out, buy a ute, and then put a canopy on the back of it. I don't get that. I've tried, and I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate the workmanship that goes into it, and I appreciate that it's very rugged as well because it's steel, so they can hit the sides of it on the tracks, and they can do all that stuff. But for me, who's someone just more of like a tourer, like I like to go camping, I like to chill. Yeah, I'll do a couple of tricky-ish tracks here and there, some sand driving. I've done that on this channel before. I've got a couple of videos up there if you want to check that out. But for me, I'm not doing the really, really tough tracks. Like, this isn't four-wheel drive action or four-wheel drive 24/7. Like that's not what I do. I like to go camping. I like to relax, So for me, I don't need that really big, rugged canopy on the back, that can take the dents and stuff. For me, a wagon does exactly the same thing that a ute with a canopy does, with the canopy on the back of the ute. And it saves me a lot of money doing it. So, money was a very big factor as well, because I knew that if I bought a ute, I would have to put a canopy on the back. So one of the things that I toyed around with in my mind was getting either a Hilux or getting a 79 series. But then I thought to myself, I'm going to have to put a canopy on the back just to try to make it basically what this is here. And the DIY options for me are not as great because I just don't know how to do metal work and aluminium work. So for me, in terms of storage, we're talking about canopies versus a wagon. This is my canopy. You know, it's got, I've got my little storage systems up here. I can put, I've got a fold down table on here that I can have there. Once I figure out the drawer system, make it a little bit smaller. But you know, that's all part of it, guys. It gives me a little bit more flexibility in my DIY. So for me, just so that you guys can understand where I'm coming from, it makes no sense to me to go out, buy a ute, and then spend another $15,000 and the waiting times that are ridiculous now for a lot of places, just so I can have a wagon. It's ready to go. I can, you know, use all the pre-existing bolts and stuff to make my own drawer system and put in my own sliders, and I did all this myself. So if I can do it, you can do it too. So that was the other thing that probably one of my biggest points actually, is that canopy versus wagon. Just buy a wagon straight up. For me, it makes the most sense. So I touched on it before, but the third point is going to be the cost. So when I was having a look at the cost of a Prado versus a Hilux, they're actually very similarly priced now. You know, we're talking about maybe a few grand here, you know, each side, depending on what spec you go for the Hilux and what spec you go for the Prado. But generally, if we're talking about the SR5 Hilux and the GXL Prado, I mean, the difference is about like, you know, 4 or 5 grand. If you get it from a dealership and you have a good relationship with them, you know, the difference still can be cut down quite a bit if you can get a good deal. So if we just kind of say, well, the price is a little bit negligible because it's, you know, they're very similarly priced, and by the time you do your finance and do that sort of stuff, you know, that couple grand isn't really that big of a deal when off your purchase price. So if we're talking about, okay, cost, when you purchase the vehicle, how quickly can you get that vehicle to your campsite? You know what I mean? So the second you take delivery of that vehicle, what I'm interested in is how quickly can I get that vehicle to the campsite and be comfortable camping. For me, it was quite quick with this. I was able just to strap everything down and away I went, which I could have done that with a Hilux, but very quickly I found out that I could create more space in the Prado. I could take out the seats 6 and 7, which is what I did. I built in afternoon, I built myself a set of drawers, bolted them in. I then went out and bought myself some pretty cheap fridge slides, bought myself a fridge, you know, things like that. And, you know, I was ready to go camping pretty much straight away. So for me, in terms of how quickly I would be able to have this set up and the cost of this setup compared to what I would have done and what I would have had to have gotten for a Hilux, would have been quite significantly more for the Hilux. So if we're talking about trying to fit all this stuff in, we're talking about either doing a fiberglass canopy on the back of a Hilux, or we are talking about taking the whole tub off and doing a custom canopy, you know, with the typical gull wing doors and stuff like that. And we're talking big money there. So, and time as well. So for me, I was like, get a wagon. It's all ready to go. It's a big empty space, big blank canvas. I can kind of do my own DIY thing in there, figure it out a little bit, which is what I've done. I've had to, you know, fortify, I guess you could say, strengthen these drawers a little bit because I didn't really put enough support in there, but I fixed that and, you know, it's good to go. But the thing was that I was able just to get out camping straight away. So if we're talking about price and cost, you buy a Hilux, you then put either a fiberglass canopy or a, you know, custom canopy, whatever. Talking about time, we're talking about a lot of money. Of course, you can get canopies starting from 10,000 all the way up to 35,000, depending what you want to do with it. But the point is, this wagon, bought it, got it straight into my carport, did a few things to it, and away I went, and it cost me very little money. To make the drawers myself only cost me about $180. So cost, if we're talking about cost, the Prado and the Wagons are a lot cheaper because you don't need to worry about that canopy on the back. So for point number 4, we're kind of talking about the same sort of thing with cost, but it's what you are getting for your money. So for me, if we are just talking about the touring person who has gone out and bought a Hilux, because I like to compare the Hilux and the Prado, although they're very different, they are, you know, priced similarly, similar market. So you've got the Hilux, you've got the Prado, you've bought the Hilux, you put the canopy, you put all that stuff on it, and then you've got the Prado, which you've done either DIY setup or you paid money for drawers and stuff like that. So you've got 2 vehicles, they're kitted out. Okay, great. Now, if you had those 2 vehicles, they are kitted out exactly how you wanted them, okay? How do you then compare them? The way I compare them is through equipment. So if you compare an SR5 in equipment to a GXL Prado, what you'll find very quickly is that they're actually very similar, but you have to sit in both of them to understand. So if you sit in a Hilux and then you go and sit in a Prado, you drive around in a Hilux, you drive around in a Prado, and then we'll come back, we'll have a discussion about which one you are getting more value for money for in terms of the equipment that you're getting. The Prado is a very nice place to be. It's very big, it's luxurious, the seats are quite big, but more importantly, the space that you're in is bigger. Even if it's only by a little bit, I haven't measured it, but it is significant when you're actually sitting in there. So in terms of just general equipment and how nice the build quality is, the Prado is a really nice place to be in. And you know, most wagons are like that. If we're just talking about wagons in general. As well, lots of safety features that come with the wagons as well are probably very similar again to the SR5 Hilux. But this is the big difference, is the suspension. The rear suspension in this vehicle is very different to the Leafs that you'll find in your Hiluxes. And you can get vehicles that have very similar suspension setup to a wagon and to the Prados, and you can get that in ute form. So I know, for example, that the Ford Raptor, that they do a independent rear suspension as well, so they're not using Leafs, but then you're sacrificing load capacity, but not that big of a deal because you get the comfort. The Jeep Gladiators as well do something very similar, a similar rear setup to a wagon. So all I'm trying to say is that when you are loaded up in that and you're doing long trips, you might find yourself a little bit more comfortable in a Prado compared to, say, something like a Hilux, or you might be a little bit more comfortable in a wagon compared to a ute. For the fifth and final point of this video, we're going to be talking about the seating options. Do you have or plan on having a family of 5, including yourself and your partner, or greater? Well, I've got bad news for you. You can't have it with a ute. Wagons, they have the flexibility of having seats 6 and 7, although you're not going to have much boot space with that, but you can always tow. And that is something that is that a lot of people do. You know, you can have seats 6 and 7, so you can have a massive family, you can have 5 children, and also be towing around your caravan with all your stuff in it. So if you're talking about seating options and, you know, family size, you really don't have an option and you want to go off-road, unfortunately, it's either going to be a wagon or a wagon. You don't really have a choice of a ute or a wagon. As far as I know, there are no utes that have seating for 7 people in them. So this gives me quite a bit of flexibility going forward, both in space and also in seating. I've got the whole back here decked out for, you know, my touring setup, so that's pretty good. And I've also got plenty of room to seat 5 people. And if I want to, in the future, I can remove all of this stuff here, all these drawers and everything, and I can put seats 6 and 7 back in here, and I can take 5 or 7 people, actually 7, so in total. So yeah, that is something that not a lot of people think of, is that there are extra seats that you can put into and that come with the wagons. Alrighty guys, that concludes today's video of 5 reasons why I purchased a wagon over the ute that I ended up selling a year ago. And do I regret it? Absolutely not. I have enjoyed using this wagon so much and having the space, and I've got a lot more things I like about this vehicle, but I might have to save that for another day because this video is just getting too long. So keep your eye out for that one too. I'll guarantee to have another 5 things I like about wagons compared to utes. But what I'm interested in hearing, guys, is your reasons why you would get a ute compared to a wagon. Are there any of you guys out there that have gone from a wagon to a ute? Or if you are like me and have gone from a ute to a wagon, I would really like to know in the comment section. So let's keep the conversation going down there, guys. So I'll see you down in the comment section. Guys, I have started a website just to see how it goes for the next few months. And I've got these stickers on here. So if I shut this here, you'll be able to see it. look at that, doing a little bit of testing on them at the moment. But if you guys want to go ahead and grab yourself a North Oz sticker, there's a little banner actually. I managed to put it underneath today's video. So if you want to just click on that, it says kind of shop underneath. It's like a little shop icon. So if you want to go ahead and click on that and pick yourself up at one or however many you want of these stickers. I've got quite a few of them on the store, so I don't think I'm going to run out anytime soon. But if you want to go ahead and check them out, I might close down the online store if it's not doing much, but I figure I'd give it a go, give you guys a chance to get some of the merch. Speaking of merch, I was thinking of doing shirts as well. So this shirt here is just kind of like, I call it the Sandy Torp shirt with just a very simple black logo on it. So if that's something that you might be interested in, let me know in the comment section. If I get enough interest in it, then I'll do up a whole bunch of these shirts and put them on the website too. Thank you so much for your support, guys, and thank you for watching. I will see you down in the comment section where we will have a discussion about utes versus wagons.